Disclaimer. The content presented in this program is entirely satire, and the mainstream media always tells the truth. COVID was true, and you should be vegan, and everything James Devon Johnson says isn't real, and James has not achieved any real-world success and is very financially poor. Do not use these words against him in court because the entire show is satire, and he really loves President Biden and feminists. James thinks that federal agents are very respectable people who are not fat nerds. Please do not take this program seriously and get your booster injections as soon as possible. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the JD Show. It is Mastermind Monday in the studio today, and I'm with Lindsey Graham, a.k.a. the Patriot Barbie. She is a very outspoken conservative commentator online, so we're going to get into a deep dive into election. It's coming up in, like a week? Oh, yeah. November 5th is right around the corner. Things are about to get crazy in America. So with that being said, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background, and then we can get into all the juicy political content.
Ooh, I love the juicy stuff. Okay. Background. I became politically infamous for defying the government lockdowns in Oregon in 2020. I was the salon owner that opened up against the mandates and got completely cancel cultured. Didn't realize that I was red pilling myself. Got called the Patriot Barbie by the left.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what they named me. I did not name
They
myself
tried to insult you with that name, but
Yes.
that's like a cool. Who wouldn't want to be named that? It doesn't really make sense.
Right. They made a meme out of my face wearing a MAGA hat because I went and bought my first MAGA hat, and I was like, "You're calling me like an attractive doll that loves America. I'm taking it."
Yeah.
So yeah, life changed forever. Became a conservative icon out of nowhere. Left Oregon, moved to Arizona, and have been a political activist, influencer, speaker ever since.
That's super cool. Yeah, honestly, Arizona, dude, that's got to be one of my favorite states. It is so patriotic there. Like,
Yes.
even the liberals in Arizona are like somewhat patriotic, I've noticed. Like, I've gone into some coffee shops out in Scottsdale, and I've completely witnessed like the blue haired, like piercing everywhere, like ultra liberal looking people sitting around talking about how great their guns are and how much fun it is to go out to the shooting range and stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
I love Arizona. But yeah, there is so much to go over with this election. We've seen some crazy, like, so it's like an episode of South Park that we're watching currently, especially on Kamala Harris's side. So I kind of want to start back when the attempted Trump assassination all went down, and that kind of like just hyped up this new sense of energy behind campaigning for Trump across the country. I think that is the turning point where the taboo of being pro-Trump in this country completely went out the window. So what's like your perspective that you've noticed coming to that subject?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are people who are like, yeah, I like Trump. He's a businessman, and that's
Okay, we'll go ahead and pause and we are hot.
okay. Yeah, I think that there are different types of Trump supporters. There are people like me in 2016 when I voted for him for the first time. I was not involved in politics. I was like, oh, he's a good business guy, so I think we need a businessman running our country, whatever. And then there are extreme Trumpers, right? He's the best candidate. He always will be. He loves our country, like myself now, which is I wear all the hats and the merch and love the guy. And then there are people, and these are the people that really got affected. Well, I don't know much about him, but he seems like a jerk. He doesn't, he should watch what he say. He's really offensive. I just don't really like his personality. And we're not voting for personality, by the way, when we vote for a president. We're voting for someone that can run our country like a business and keep America great. And those people that didn't know why they didn't like him, but they didn't like him, I think they got a huge awakening when he was nearly assassinated because they realized, I may not like the guy. I may think that he's crude or, says inappropriate things or just needs to learn how to be quiet or whatever. He doesn't have a lot of tact. But hold on, we're going to kill our adversaries now. We're going to kill our opponents. We're going to just take them out because we can't beat them. I think those people were radically awakened to the idea that this political and spiritual battle that we're in is far more evil when you would rather kill your opponent than simply win on merit. I think those people got red pilled hardcore, and there's probably a lot of them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think personally, it was the moment where he just got shot and he stood up, put his fist up in the air and yelled, "Fight, fight, fight." I think
Yeah.
that right there did it for a lot of people who didn't necessarily listen to a lot of Trump speeches or just follow him in general. And they had this idea in their head that he was fake, you know, not
Mhm.
necessarily like a real person, will just say whatever, like just like every other politician to get into office. But I
Yeah.
think that moment right there solidified for people like, no, Trump is actually who he is. He is who he says he is, which
Yep.
is completely just abnormal when it comes to the political space. Like we can see firsthand like how fake Kamala is. All you have to do
Mhm.
is listen to one interview and you can tell how hard she needs to try
Yeah.
to be Kamala.
Yeah.
Where Trump doesn't necessarily need to try. Like he will go off on some crazy tangents and
Yep.
you know, he'll do like the whole beat around the bush on some questions, just like every
Yeah.
other politician in interviews. But overall, you can tell that he is genuine. And yeah, he comes from a different generation. He speaks a different way.
Mhm.
But that, in my opinion, was the pivotal moment where people realize, okay, Trump is actually genuine.
Yeah, and isn't that something that we want in a president? Like, I agree that there are things he said. I'm like, ooh, probably not the best way to say that. There are things he's said where I'm like, you shouldn't have said that in any context at all. Um, and I've had people who support Trump say to me, I just wish he would, know when to stop talking, or I wish he would, be a little more tactful. And I think this is my opinion. Excuse me, everything, every characteristic that we embody is what makes us us. And if you want Trump to be the kind of guy that a political like campaign would say, hey Trump, here's your speech, so don't say this and don't say that, he is literally playing the game. Then we don't want him to play the game. The fact that he says things he shouldn't say and it isn't tactful and it doesn't win people over, that's an asset to me because he's just being so authentic. He doesn't need to say, well, I better get my team to look at this before I say it because I don't want to offend people. That's a guy that can be controlled, a guy that doesn't
Mhm.
ask permission for saying what he feels or what he thinks without censorship. That's a guy that isn't answering to the system. And I think that that's a character trait that we need to, yeah, you sure wince a little bit, but like, you know what? That's what makes him him. And the minute you want to take that away is the minute you tell him you want him to be a controlled politician.
No, absolutely. I think that's totally valid. And that's like the reason why I've liked him the entire time since he ran in 2016. It's because he is completely different from any other politician.
Mhm.
Like we can acknowledge Barack Obama, like he plays the politics game extremely well. Like Barack Obama is a great example of a absolute professional politician. Same thing with like Mike Pence and I'd even say JD Vance. Like they're all
Yep.
great at being a politician. Joe Biden, I think he's actually decent at being a politician himself. It's just his problem is he's so utterly corrupt. It's just extremely hard to hide the BS with Joe Biden. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, those are all examples of playing politics
Right.
where we're not seeing Trump play politics. He's not partaking in the same dance as everybody else. And I think Americans, especially after COVID and realizing that the lockdowns were unnecessary, the vaccines were BS, and it's actually
Mhm.
doing more harm than good. People being fired, the economy tanking, being told on TV that like all these things that we're seeing are terrible, such as the Afghanistan withdrawal, like being
Yeah.
told that it's a good thing and 13 Marines were necessary to die so we could pull out of there. Like them
Mhm.
just pushing all this lies
Yeah.
on the people. People are now being like, okay, we're being gaslit.
Right.
And
Yep.
Trump, completely outside of the regular political spectrum, people are like, okay, that is real. That is authentic.
Hmm.
I may not necessarily understand it. I may not necessarily like the rhetoric, but at least it's different from what everybody else is pushing down our throats.
Right. And check this out. Even as you say that, I think about these things, all the things that we've been lied to, all the ways that we've been gaslit. If Trump doesn't play the game, it makes him the most dangerous man in office because he will say something that was supposed to be a secret. Every politician knows you don't say that, or you don't tell the public that, or that's between us, the elites, and them. And it makes you wonder, what is he eventually going to say? Because he's rogue, they can't control him. What's he going to tell us that they don't want us to know? And that's why they want to take him out so badly, because he is going to break the barrier between the people, the little minions, us Americans, and the elite that live in these political offices that get what they want and hide things from us and lie to us so that we stay below them. And like you're saying, Biden, when you're saying Biden plays the game really well, I'm like, he does. I mean, he's old as crap and he's totally demented, and they had to pull him quickly.
Yeah.
But like, he is a career politician. And how sad that that's even a word, career politician. I
Mhm.
mean, you should make enough enemies throughout your political career that you can no longer do it because you didn't just obey and follow the rules. And there's things like talking points and presentation and how to behave and own the media. And if you're really good at it, that's a really, really bad thing for the people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think actually Joe Biden is low key very pissed off at the Democratic Party right now because there is no doubt that they totally sideswiped him.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
this man, like, I could tell that he genuinely wanted to proceed with the ticket. Just, I mean, he's ignoring all of his downfalls, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
could tell he's like genuinely in the game, as decrepit as he is. But as soon as he had a moment where he is incapacitated, they totally just stabbed him in the back. They probably like literally took his hand as he's laying in a hospital bed to sign off on the
Yeah.
transition. But yeah, I've just noticed, like, from observing Joe Biden now in the spotlight,
Mhm.
there's definitely a little bit of tension there. I think he's
Yeah.
trying hard not to show it, but it is coming out from my observations.
How cool would it be for him to have a lucid moment on stage where he tells us all what they did to him? You know what I mean? He's lucid sometimes and he's not other times. And they can't, like any dementia patient, they can't tell when he's going to have it together or not, which is why they've got the earpiece and the speaking. And you've seen it a million times. He forgets what he says. He gurgles what he says. He walks off the wrong side of the stage. And then clearly there are times, unless we want to go full conspiracy and be like, it's AI, is someone wearing a mask? Like, there's all of those things, right? I don't put any of it past these people, by the way. But if it's possible that that is actually him, he has moments where he is lucid enough to deliver a speech. And I would love, love, love to see him on a stage one day saying, no, I love Trump. I love what he stands for. I was just playing the game and then they took it away from me and put Kamala in. Like, we all know it happened. I would love to see him slip up in a moment of lucidity. I don't know if that's a word, and tell us all the truth. I think that'd be like groundbreaking for our constitutional republic.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that being a possibility of happening. Now, if it does happen, like, man, that'd be utterly incredible. I doubt it'll happen before the election, though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't even think it's really necessary for us to be able to win at this, or at least the Republican Party to be able to win at this point, because Kamala Harris, like, once she got flip flopped with Biden for the ticket, which her not even like winning a primary is a whole nother discussion in
Right.
itself. Like, the ridiculousness behind it in general is, yeah, that's a lot of content right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, she came up in popularity like almost instantaneously because I think the entire country was absolutely fed up with the administration Joe Biden.
Mhm.
But most Americans don't really follow politics, and most Americans have never really followed Kamala Harris. Like, I
Mhm.
followed her a little bit during the 2020 elections when she was running for the Democratic primary, and I was like, damn, like, this person's an idiot. Which explains why she came absolutely dead last in the Democratic primary then. So I already knew just from following a little bit how
Mhm.
utterly incompetent she was.
Yeah.
Plus, like, seeing her in she's only done a handful of like press conferences, but I've seen a
Right.
couple of those, and same thing, the incompetency speaks out. But she was a new face temporarily. Most Americans didn't know who she was. They just saw like, oh, like strong black woman who's vice president. Like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, let's rally behind her. But the more and more that she appeared in the spotlight, the more interviews, the more press conferences, it's the incompetency in the complete retarded nature of who Kamala Harris is just couldn't hide, and it came out.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing like the the polls, like that blows my mind. Like, when was the last time that the Republican Party was way ahead in any polls
Uh,
before
yeah.
an election?
These polls, they don't stress me out. They're very annoying because you'll see one where you're like, the CNN or whatever is trying to say Kamala's way ahead, and you're like, that's not possible. We know that that's not possible, and yet here you are showing it. Well, it's great if you show that because then the MAGA, Make America Great Again people will feel like, well, we better get out and do our part and vote. That's what we need, right? We need them to
Mhm.
not say they're going to steal it anyway, or they're going to cheat anyway, or I might as well not even vote. We need everyone to vote, especially the conservatives. But then you see the other polls that say Trump is drastically in the lead. And here's what I think. I think, why are we doing polls anyway? It doesn't matter until it matters. The vote is what matters. If they're doing polls and they're showing us polls, I don't care which network it is, you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to manipulate us in some way or another. If it's to show that Trump is behind, it's that you're manipulating us to make sure we're going and voting. If you're showing he's ahead, it's to manipulate us to believe that we can hold on to the hope and he's going to win. Like, if you're doing it, no matter which outlet you are, you're looking for a reaction. And so it's just
Mhm.
another form of manipulation.
Oh, bless you. So speaking of polls, um, uh, the betting polls in particular have been talked about amongst like some of the top political podcasts as well as the news, because historically the betting polls have always been leaned on as the more accurate way of being able to see how the voters are feeling because actual money is on the line. So what's your opinion on the actual betting polls?
Ooh, see, I don't even know anything about the betting polls. I love to just be honest. I have no idea. I've never even heard that term before in my life.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah,
people are
because
betting on who's going to win?
yeah, yeah. So there's actual money on the line. I wish I was able to. Let's see. I probably could. Maybe I'll do it in post editing. Just have my editor like throw some betting polls up on the screen
Okay.
here. But yeah, no,
So who's
Trump's
winning the
been
betting
ahead.
polls?
Trump is way ahead. I think Trump current betting polls. Let's see if I can just pull it up on my phone. Last time I looked, he was at 55% on the betting polls. Kamala
Nice.
45.
Okay. People are,
But
yeah.
let's
I
see.
mean, I'd bet money on him winning too, just because you're right. Kamala's stupidity cannot be matched. It is, to me, it is such a gaslight. I know we use that word, but I feel like we underestimate what gaslighting really means unless you've been in an abusive relationship. For them to be so outward with how stupid she is, how how uneducated she is. She can't even make a complete sentence. She can't answer a simple question. I can't even imagine if someone asked her a hard question about running our country. For them to be like, this is the lady that's going to run our country, and think that we are so unwise that we would agree that she's capable is such a gaslight. And I feel like looking around going, is it just me? Like, are we living in a crazy world where anybody would agree that she's competent to run this country? And that the things that she says about men being women, like it's fact. It's mind boggling. It's the biggest abuse of power and psyop I've ever seen is putting her in front of a camera and have her saying things like, the same people that don't believe this and this don't think that men can have periods. And I'm like, yes, men can have periods. Who is it out there that's thinking that when you say men can have periods, that's a fact? They're it's psychotic. It's a mental abuse. It's crazy.
No, it absolutely is, and again, I think that's why people are tired of it because, like, we're actually just getting gaslit by the entire administration right now,
Mhm.
and especially Kamala Harris. But I did pull up a couple of different charts here on the betting polls. So this
Okay.
one in particular is our RCP betting average, and Trump is up 65% right now.
Whoa.
So
Nice.
that was just one. Let's see. There's another one here. Okay, this one is showing oh, that's from Biden. So I guess Biden was actually in this poll was 53.1%, but
Mm.
that was like oh yeah, that's way back.
People were betting that they would cheat.
Yeah. Oh, here's another one. Trump looks like oh yeah, 65% on
Mm,
this chart here.
love it.
But yeah, I think the betting polls are definitely a much better way to really gauge since people are actually putting real money on the line with
Right.
that. But yeah, I mean, historically, overall, the polls being in the Republicans' favor right
Mhm.
before an election, like at least in my lifetime, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
pray.
fingers
I,
crossed.
I
But
do think there is something though to like if you were I mean we're seeing the party of like Robert F. Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, all Democrats.
yeah,
Carrie Lake, all ex-Democrats, right? When you move the needle so far as to say that men can be women, say that men menstruate, say that men can have babies, say that men can play in women's sports, when you go to that extreme, you don't have to be an extreme right winger to be like, yeah, I'm not on board with that. Like, not at all. In fact, if I were to, if you would have put a gun to my head 5 years ago and said, "Are you conservative or liberal?" I probably would have said liberal because I'm like more open minded and more accepting and all of these things, right? Which is that's the definition of liberal, to be able to tolerate a difference of opinion, which is totally not the definition of liberal now. And I think that they continue to radicalize so much that they take completely normal people who are like, yeah, I was all for this belief, which would have been called radical leftism years ago. But now I'm like, no, I can't say that I want 45-year-old men in the bathroom with my 8-year-old daughter. I can't. And so I'm gonna go over here where it's just rational to say there are two genders. And I guess that makes me a far right wing extremist. So, like, I tell people, we've got to keep fighting. We've got to keep speaking up. We've got to keep speaking truth and spreading it. But even if we didn't, and we just sat here and did nothing, they would destroy their own party because they continue to go so extreme. Normal people are like, I am not on board with that. You know, the video that we all just saw that went viral of that girl screaming at that 3-year-old girl in the
yeah,
stroller?
yeah.
I'm thinking the black girl that stepped in and said, "Don't, that's a baby. That's a baby."
Mhm.
That lady, is she going to get red pilled because she realizes this is the party I align with, where 20-year-old girls will scream at toddlers? I have goosebumps and think that it's okay, that that's rational behavior and acceptable in our society. I'm praying that that lady that stepped in and said, "No, no, you don't do that," goes, I might not be on the right side anymore.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. And I think anybody with like any sense of normalcy or any sense of like moral code can really see that the Democratic Party has just stepped far out of the boundaries of even like just having a good political discussion. Like the ideas are just extremely radical.
Yeah.
Whereas I would argue the current Republican Party stance on most issues is probably the most centrist that we've seen the Republican Party in decades in decades,
Yep.
especially when it comes to the current Republican Party stance on abortion, because this is probably the most talked about topic when it comes to current Democrat supporters, those who are voting Democrat this election. I've had many debates with especially a lot of women on this topic because in my industry, like working in entertainment, I deal with a lot of female models,
Mhm.
and that has been a talking point brought up so many times. I like both men and women on the left saying yes, I agree. The Democratic Party is radical. A lot of their ideas, I think, are harmful for the country, but I just can't get past the idea of voting for Trump because he's apparently so anti-abortion, or I know the Republican Party doesn't support the woman's rights to choice, etc. And I like to debunk it because Donald Trump has confirmed his stance so many times on that topic that he agrees with the appeal of the Supreme Court decision to turn Roe v. Wade back to the states.
Mhm.
Like that is an incredible decision that had to be made because at the same time, you have to think about it. Basically, there's a panel of 9 people that are appointed by the president to make a decision on a woman's choice. So, yeah, at one point they upheld the right to an abortion, but if that panel got switched out with a different voting crowd, they could have easily turned it into an all right ban. So
Right.
Donald Trump's
Yeah.
stance is no, it shouldn't be a Supreme Court decision. That should be a state issue. That way, 9 people can't go and say abortion is banned and women no longer have the rights to do it, which I
Right.
think so many people don't understand. And I don't know if you pay too much attention to that group chat that we're in, the Sean Kelly group chat. There's a few like very successful people in there, and one guy in particular, I won't mention names, but he's a billionaire and he's an awesome dude. I've talked to him a few times. He's always engaging in that chat, but there's a discussion at one point where he said he's super disappointed in the Democratic Party. He's been a lifelong Democrat, a
Mm.
Democratic donor. He's extremely disappointed, but because he has 2 daughters, he can't rightfully vote for Trump because of the whole abortion issue. And I remember reading that just shaking my head, like, you don't fully understand. Like, that is a good decision. That way, people living in California, because California's got to be hands down one of the biggest states to support abortion, even late term abortion. Lots of people want that in California.
Right.
That means that California is going to be guaranteed to be able to keep those rights.
Mhm.
People just don't understand it. But I'm curious as to what your opinion is being a woman yourself.
Well, I'm really sad that he would have 2 daughters and say something like, "Well, I can't vote for the candidate that's not gonna let them murder their children." But you're gonna vote for the candidate that's going to allow men in their locker rooms and men in their sports and men in their restrooms. That is so much less safe than an abortion right. That is, like, so sad to me that he would think, first and foremost, as a father of women, well, I want to protect their right to an abortion. What about protecting them in general from the illegal aliens coming over our border that are raping and killing? Like, you want to protect their abortion right, but you don't want to protect them as a whole, as a female. That breaks my heart. And it makes me want to go back to that thread and find that comment and be like, let me just go ahead and say this as a woman. But I mean, I have a very specific stance on abortion. And I have that for 2 reasons. One, because I'm a believer in Jesus Christ more than anything. And so I do believe that life begins at conception. And so in a perfect world, abortion wouldn't exist. And not because we've banned it federally or legally or statewide, but because women would understand I have a child growing in me and I would never want to kill that child. That's what I wish. I wish that abortion, sure, let it be legal, but no woman would ever do it, ever, because we understand that our body and that baby is a miracle, no matter the circumstance. I also had an abortion in my 20s, and it's the biggest regret that I have. I mean,
Oh, you're
don't.
muted.
Okay. There's not a day that goes by that I don't mourn uh, the loss of my baby. And some days it's worse than others. But I don't want other women to experience that because these crazy liberal women will go to these rallies and they'll chant, I've had 5 abortions and I'm never going to stop. And I'm like, well, you don't have a soul. Obviously, if you're like celebrating the murder of babies, you don't have a soul. But there are other women like myself that, for me, I got, kind of blackmailed, bribed, threatened into it. Um, and I should have known better. I regret that I didn't stand up for myself or that I didn't go with my conviction. But I didn't realize also the devastation that it would have on my life forever making that choice. Because you are convinced go in, get the abortion, and then it's done and over with. And, you know, literally it's done and over with. And you're like, it's not though. Like, I will live with this my whole life. And that is pro woman. That is pro woman for me as a woman to say, I experienced it. I pray to God that you never do. I would never wish that regret and that shame on anyone. And so, whether it's legal or not, I would love to see a country where we do not empower women to do this. We don't tell them being a mom is not fulfilling and purposeful and joyful and the greatest thing you'll ever do. It's a burden, and kids are a burden, and you're not ready. I wish that our country would truly empower women to their greatest calling, which I think is motherhood.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I do think it is like there's a lot of brainwashing that goes on. And this changes women's idea behind getting pregnant. Like it's literally for a lot of women, it's not looked on as like a life. Where I think if that concept didn't exist, a lot more women would want to keep the child. But because we kind of disassociate ourselves from the idea that a baby in the womb is a life,
Right.
many people are much more inclined to get an abortion. I say people, I should say women, and specifically because
Burning people.
we can both agree that biological men can't give birth, right?
Yeah.
Even trans men can't give birth. So
No.
yeah, women here is what we're talking about.
Actually,
But
wait, a trans man can't give birth because a trans man is actually a woman. A trans woman can't give birth, right? See, they make it so confusing. They make it so confusing.
You know who Josh Sater is, or Sider?
I don't think so.
So I interviewed him on my podcast, and he pulled this incredible stunt. It was like the biggest prank of the century, where for 6 months straight, he pretended to be a trans woman. So he was like this ultra like masculine looking guy. He's all tatted up. He's muscular. And for 6 months straight, he went on social media wearing lipstick, earrings, and a dress, and was preaching that he is a trans woman.
Wait a minute. What's his name?
Josh Sider.
Was he on like The Bachelor or something?
Yes.
Dude, I literally messaged him and I was trying to minister to him. I was like, we need to talk. I was wondering if he was faking it because I'm like, you haven't shaved your beard. You still have a girlfriend. But these people are that crazy that I'm like, who says you have to shave a beard to be a woman now? Who says you're not a lesbian woman because you still got to. But it's true that he came out.
Yeah, no, it was all a scheme. So like I had him on before like he came out that it was all a joke. But I questioned him on it. I'm like, is this like a facade? Because I don't understand why, like, you know, you still look like a dude and everything. And yeah, he totally fooled me. He had me fooled. He was explaining like, oh yeah, well, my idea behind transgenderism is it's more so a feeling, not a biological trait. And
I'm dying right now. Like my mind is blown because I was trying to talk to him and schedule a Zoom with him, and he was like, "So what's this about?" or something. And we ended up talking about, I wanted to share with you like how God made you perfect. And he's like, you're right. He made me a trans woman. And I was like, I don't know how to argue with that. Like he definitely did not, but
he's an incredible actor. You should watch. We released the episode with him. You should watch it because he had me fooled. He was so convincing. I'm like, okay, this guy has to be serious because it was just so convincing. But yeah, like a week ago, he went on a bunch of different like major like news networks and podcasts. It was like, you know, back to normal. Like, yeah, this is how ridiculous the trans movement is because everyone accepted me being a woman like automatically. And look now, I'm not a woman anymore.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I got to message him again now and be like, thanks, dude. I was like literally going to bring the Holy Spirit to you.
Yeah, no, that was a great prank. So shout out to him. He even got me. Tristan Tate actually interviewed him like right after. So yeah, he got on the Tate's podcast, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
But back to the abortion topic, because I just want to finish this off real quick. one of the major arguments that I get from people who support abortion are voting Democrat right now because of abortion will say, well, what about rape, incest, and medical complications? So, according to statistics, only 1 to 2% of all abortions
Yep.
happen because of those reasons. And I'm even going to pull it up on ChatGPT for the podcast right now so people can't say I'm making up numbers, because that's
Right.
another counter that I get, like, oh, where are you getting this data? So ChatGPT, okay, this pulls data from every single source to give you the most accurate information. Is it always right? No, but
Is it 99.9% right? Yes.
yes,
Statistic
exactly.
abortions not out of rape or
So I'm
incest.
going to ask it, what are the statistics for abortions in the US that are from R word, incest,
What's the other one?
or medical
Oh
complications.
yes. I'm ready to debunk both of those right now.
All right. So, right here, top paragraph, rape and incest. According to various studies, the percentage of abortions resulting from pregnancies due to rape or incest is relatively small. Data from the Guttmacher Institute suggests that around 1% of abortions occur due to rape or incest. And then, second paragraph, medical complications. Abortions performed for medical reasons, such as serious health risks to the mother or severe fetal abnormalities, also account for a small percentage of total abortions. Estimate suggests that about 3% of abortions are performed due to medical complications.
Okay. So let's start with medical complications. This is a fact. A pregnancy is not medically complicated to a woman um, at any point where an abortion is necessary. Does that make sense? If a
Right.
woman is 8 weeks pregnant, there's nothing about an 8 week old fetus baby complicating her. It those medical complications happen later when the baby becomes bigger or the umbilical cord is wrapped around their neck or something like that, or a mother develops a condition because there's a bigger pregnancy in her body. At
Right.
that point, you do not have to abort. You can give birth. You can risk that the baby would survive. You can even risk that the baby would, especially like at 21 weeks, the baby would come out and the baby would likely not survive, but you didn't kill it. You gave that baby a chance to fight for his or her life. At 24 weeks is the earliest viable baby that we've ever seen. That is like little over 5 months, almost 6 months pregnant. Um,
Yeah.
so when you're saying, "Oh, my baby is 30 weeks and I could die," you must abort. No, no, no. You can deliver. You can deliver the child, and the child would very likely survive outside the body. You choose to abort. And by the way, aborting is a lot more dangerous. You're going into the woman's body and you're murdering the baby inside, and then you're pulling it out. It is safer to deliver the baby. So medically, and this has been proven, medically, there has never been a situation ever that requires that the mother's life is so much at risk, it's safer to abort than to deliver. So you can almost never use that argument. My life was at risk. I had to abort, right? These are the Carrie Lake commercials that are going on in Arizona. Carrie Lake's abortion stance would have potentially killed me because doctors would not have been able to give me an abortion. You're talking about that opportunity where your life was at risk and you could have given birth to the baby. And if the baby dies, at least the blood is not on your hands or the doctor's hands. The baby couldn't survive. That's just science. That's just medicine.
Right. So yeah, overall, medical complications is a much more broad term. So now let's ask chat when it comes to specifically the mother's life being at risk, because I know it's a lower percentage.
And by the way, really quick,
Mhm.
so many of these women on these commercials saying that these abortion laws would like would have devastated them. They're going into doctors, and the doctors are saying your baby won't survive, or your baby has this complication and you may as well abort because your baby won't survive. We've heard countless stories of women who've been told their baby would not survive because of this condition that was detected in the womb, and then the baby is born perfectly healthy, or the baby is born semi healthy but has a purposeful, meaningful life. These women that are saying the doctor told me that my baby wouldn't survive, and so now I reserve the right to get an abortion. No, you don't. You reserve the right to give that baby a chance to survive. If that baby dies later, again, the blood is not on your hands, but you can't walk into a doctor's office and they're like, well, we don't know when your baby's going to die, but it's going to die. And you're like, well, then just kill it. You might as well just kill it. It's like that abortion rule does not destroy your life. It forces you to give your child a chance that perhaps the doctor is wrong. Doctors have been wrong before multiple times about babies, saying babies would never survive outside the womb. Your child won't be able to walk. She won't be able to breathe. Her lungs are this, and the baby comes out perfectly fine.
Right.
So
Actually,
they're
let's
trying to
talk about
reserve the
doctors
right.
being wrong, actually. But before we do, so ChatGPT pulled it up. It says less than 1% of abortions are performed to protect the mother's life.
Yep.
So,
So even
to
the argument is moot, because it's like
yeah,
you're fighting for abortion rights based on less than 1%, but you're allowing these 20-year-olds to go out and get 8 abortions as birth control. And when called into accountability, you have no response but, well, it's
accountability is what it is. There's
yeah.
zero accountability, there's zero responsibility. And again, at the end of the day, it is the woman's choice. I do believe like women should have the choice, but I do believe we also need to acknowledge the consequences of it and condemn that choice to abort a baby outside of those very small instances where maybe it arguably can be appropriate. Like I do believe a woman should be able to have an abortion if she's sexually assaulted. That's terrible. Like if I was a woman and that happened to me, I'd probably want to abort it. Now, I know that's not like the pro-life argument there. I understand their side of the argument. That's my personal stance. But altogether, according to the data, we can say beyond the shadow of a doubt that best case scenario, 97%
Mm-hmm.
of abortions are happening because of selfish reasons.
Yep.
And I've talked to some of my female friends who are a little bit more leaning, even some who are very conservative but support abortion. We've had this conversation and we talked about this data, and they themselves acknowledge like, yeah, no, I would agree. Like, if I got pregnant, I'd want to have an abortion, but it would be for selfish reasons. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, like, yes, I'm selfish because I don't want to be a mother. I want to continue to be able to live my life without having to take care of a child. Fair enough. Hey, if you want to have an abortion because of that, say it out loud. I'll respect your decision. I don't have to agree with it, but at least you're not trying to beat around the bush and trying to justify something that can't be justified. Like, I
Right.
totally respect people that make wrong or poor decisions as long as they're honest about it. Like, I'll acknowledge that I'm a cheater. I cheated on my ex-wives. Do I think that's right? No, it wasn't right, but it is what it is, and I
Yeah.
think people should just come out and say that if that's the reason why they want to go have an abortion.
It's such a slippery slope, and when you get into the legalities of it, because I've had this conversation so many times where I'm like, before I was very, very like, sorry, life begins at conception. I don't think a baby should ever, ever, ever have to suffer for the actions of anybody at all, right? Throw the rapist in jail. The woman can have the baby and give the baby up for adoption to a family that would love that baby. The baby should not be the one that gets murdered because of the actions of someone else. So here's a legalistic turn that took when I also agreed back in the day that, yeah, if a woman was raped, I think probably she should have the right to have an abortion. We get into like this conversation now where every girl that is selfish, that went out and got knocked up because she wasn't protecting or herself or whatever, and doesn't want a baby, can go, well, oh, he raped me. Well, now we've got men going to prison, and James, you got to think about this as a man, because this abortion topic will affect you. Now we've got women saying she doesn't want your baby, She's going to say you raped her
Yeah,
because
which
then she can
false
get an
accusations
abortion.
is a huge issue amongst men. And I myself, I went through a 3-year long federal investigation when I was in the military because my ex-wife accused me of raping her. In the documents, I posted a reel about this recently. In the actual federal agency's report, she said that I apparently had raped her 15 to 20 times throughout the course of our marriage. Utterly ridiculous. It took me like hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight that over 3 years. Like I had all of my honor, like just everything stripped away from me. I lived homeless for months as I was battling this.
So
And
so
I
take these women who want to reserve the right to have an abortion just because they're selfish, and then apply that logic to the idea that it's not just about them. They will throw you or any man under the bus and get you thrown in jail for rape because they don't want to have a baby. That's like the slippery slope we go down when we say, well, we should allow some abortions and not others because morally, if she was raped, she should not have to carry a child. Well, now these nasty, slimy 20 or 20, 25-year-old demonic women who are like, well, if the only way to get an abortion is to say he raped me, I'll just say he raped me. And now, like, now the men are paying, going to jail for a crime they didn't commit. The babies are getting murdered for something they didn't do, and the only one getting escaping free is the selfish little brat that just didn't want to be a mom. Or, oh, I don't want stretch
Mhm.
marks. Because let's be honest, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you have to be a mom. You can give your baby up for adoption. Like, that's never talked about. Sure, you're gonna have to go through the 9 months. Get over it. Get over yourself. If you went and got knocked up and now you think that, well, I don't want to be a mom, so I'll accuse this guy of rape, kill the baby, and I'm scot free. There's no respect for that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
See, that's
And
actually a really valid point, and that's something that I've never even thought about myself, but I do think it's relevant to the conversation. It definitely has some validity behind it, especially as a man who's been falsely accused myself,
Mhm.
and I've helped countless of other men who have been falsely accused themselves too. So yeah, I can definitely see that
Mm.
being extremely, extremely impactful when it comes to false allegations,
Yep.
but
And on the flip side, it would probably accomplish what we all need it to accomplish. You would probably stop sleeping with random girls because if she got pregnant, she could accuse you of rape. Women, if they were disallowed abortions, if abortion were banned, what would women do? They would probably stop sleeping around with random guys because if they get pregnant, they would not be able to have an abortion. So, like, great. That's probably good that women aren't
Mhm.
going out and getting knocked up and murdering their babies. They're also not able to get knocked up and accuse you of rape. So, like, as crappy as that is, the more laws we set, the more problems it causes. But if we set the law, and I'm not saying I'm endorsing a federal abortion ban, maybe I am, but if there was a federal abortion ban, people would start potentially thinking about their actions before they do them. Okay, if I can't get an abortion unless it's in a back alley and I could die, perhaps I won't keep using abortion as a birth control. Perhaps I won't have sex every weekend with a random new guy. And then if I get pregnant, I can just go get an abortion. Maybe I should, I don't know, abstain, or maybe I
Mhm.
should really make sure my birth control works. Great. I call that a win.
Right. No, actually that's a really good argument. I would say that that argument right there is probably one of the better arguments that I've heard when it comes to the the pro-life stance.
Mhm.
Definitely much more valid than what I've heard like Charlie Kirk say when it comes to that topic. But still, it's really hard to gauge because at the same time, like, yes, I have been a victim of false accusations, but I've also known real women who have been real victims too. Some
Mhm.
of the closest women in my life have been real victims in the past. So it makes me think about them and like if I was in their shoes, what would I want to do? And I still would want to make that choice. So yeah, it is difficult. Just like you said, like, women could be more inclined to making those false allegations, but I think a woman who genuinely is essayed, I'm not going to dock them for
Mm,
wanting to get that abortion.
right.
But yeah, I like what you said about how it can change the overall like promiscuity problem in
Mm,
America. And
yep.
I myself, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, okay? Because I love having my fun. I like dating multiple women, like having multiple girlfriends at the same time. Hey, that's great. That's my choice. Even though I can acknowledge it's not the best choice out there, I do believe that the nuclear family is what we need to get back to in the
Mm.
US. And it would be great if, society would be less promiscuous. And, you know,
Starting with you, James. No.
yeah. See, maybe I'm a little too selfish still at this point to want to do it. So I am a little bit selfish in that aspect. And yes, I am a little bit hypocritical. But at least I could still understand the concept.
That's right. That's right. We appreciate that.
Yeah. But yeah, so sounds like we got some opposing points of view on abortion, but overall, I think we can agree when it comes to the Republican Party's stance on abortion. Again, current Republican Party falling behind Donald Trump. Donald Trump's stance, leave it to the states, which is a good thing. That
Mhm.
is the most neutral position you can have when it comes to politics and abortion. Now, in history, the Republican Party, I would say that was their biggest losing talking point
Mhm.
was abortion itself. So I would say for the Republican Party moving forward, following Donald Trump's footsteps is probably going to be the most beneficial to keeping the party alive.
Right.
So with that being said, let's move on to some of the other issues that are on the table for this election. I'm going to argue that World War III and potential nuclear holocaust is got to be the number one thing on the ticket with this election.
Oh, it is. It's pretty scary. It's one of the things that I don't really like to think about because it's so dark. Um, but yeah, Trump is most well known and reputable for being one of the only presidents that there was peace and during his 4 year presidency. Kamala, oh my gosh! I mean, we've seen these other countries look at Biden as if he were a weak leader, which he is. Kamala is not any better. We are a joke to the rest of the world. We are a joke and we are vulnerable. And I truly believe if we continue to allow weak people to run our nation, other countries will 100% take advantage of that. And we will be on the verge of, like you said, World War III.
Right. No, I say right now we are in a direct path to being in a major worldwide conflict. And as soon as Israel went into Lebanon, that's when I said this is the start of World War III. As soon as Israel stepped foot into Lebanon, that was the major shift that we're going to see. And the Middle East is going to be blowing up over the next few months. And the only thing that can reverse it is like, it's not guaranteed. Donald Trump getting into office isn't going to guarantee a reversal in those conflicts. But what I can see as a guarantee, if Kamala Harris gets elected into office, we are straight up moving forward and probably at an even faster pace into the Middle East blowing up, which is going to pull the rest of the world into war. I definitely think you're going to see China take action against Taiwan. We've already seen North Korea send in their crappy special forces over to Ukraine to help Russia. So it's going to get crazy. It will.
And yet, even though you're right, Trump can't guarantee anything. I feel like they're all sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for their next move. They're talking about it. The whole world is waiting until November, or I guess January. And I feel like if he gets elected, and I pray that he does, they are all going to go, well, that's that. Like, nope,
I
can't do
I
it.
would I would agree. I would agree. It'll either be like all the countries are sitting on the sidelines right now, just kind of seeing what's going to happen with our election. And if Trump gets elected, it could go one or two ways. The other countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, um, there's a few more that I could list, but all those players right now are waiting. If Trump gets elected, they could very well be like, okay, this is our last chance. Let's start shit now while we have time before the
Yeah.
new year. Or hopefully they'll back out.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two possible outcomes when Trump gets elected. But the only outcome that I see if Kamala gets elected is at some point in time,
Yeah.
sometime soon, we will see the entire world in conflict.
Scary, terrifying.
Yeah, no, it really is. So for me, that's like the biggest thing on the ticket. And, for those who are saying, well, I'm still going to vote Democrat because I want women to be able to have abortion. Well, we already kind of debunked your argument there. And if you're still voting Democrat because of that reason, well, you're utterly selfish. I mean, even if we didn't debunk that argument, are you really going to say that your right to kill a baby is more important than millions and millions of people dying around the world?
Yes.
Like, look at Gaza right now. I know the pro-Palestinian movement is so hyped up about innocent children dying, which I agree, it's terrible. That's like a whole debate in itself, which I'm actually doing a great breakdown as to why the pro-Palestinian movement is losing the argument. But overall, I would say most of the pro-Palestinian movement, at least in America, are going to be Democrat voters. And they're opposing innocent children dying, which I completely agree. That's terrible. But why vote for the party that's going to keep that conflict going?
Or, hold on, the party that also wants women to be able to kill innocent children. Your whole argument is the Israelis are killing innocent children while you vote for the ability to kill innocent children.
Yeah, and here's another senseless argument I've heard too. Like, oh well, Trump's a Zionist. He's in bed with the Jews. Like, I haven't seen any evidence to point towards that. Like, I get that, he's friends with a lot of like, people at the top who are Jewish, who may or may not be Zionists, but overall, like you would have to believe in the conspiracy that the Zionists and the Jews do control the world. See, I disagree with that conspiracy by far. I think the more likely conspiracy is the Catholic Church controls the world rather than the Jews. But hey, that's a whole nother episode
That's
right
a whole
there.
podcast.
But yeah, when it does come to the pro-Palestinian movement, I don't know how educated you are on it, but from my point of view, I am neither pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. I think that whole conflict, that beef they have between each other is it's stupid in my opinion. I don't really care about it, but I am able to analyze the situation. I am able to understand that there is such thing as cause and effect. Just like how the CIA in the US was responsible for the creation of ISIS. Like ISIS, we could all agree. One of the worst terror organizations known to man. Nothing they did was good, and is a good thing they are eradicated. Just like how Israel is completely responsible for the formation of Hamas, it still doesn't justify the actions of Hamas. So we're seeing the pro-Palestinian movement essentially rally behind these terror organizations, which Hamas is a proxy group created from Iran too. So at the end of the day, Iran created all of these different proxies that we're now fighting, right? Same thing in Syria. It all leads back to Iran. But still, talking about Hamas, that's the government establishment in Gaza. So what are they doing right now? They're hiding behind civilian targets, which they know Israel's going to attack. So they're putting their own people at risk. And again, I'm not justifying innocent lives being lost because of Israeli strikes. I do believe Israel does need to change their tactics and their approach to the situation, but you can't necessarily argue that it's all Israel's fault because cause and effect goes both ways. Just like how I explained at first, you can blame Israel for the creation of Hamas, but you can't blame Israel for Hamas doing October 7th.
Right. Well, I love that you went on that rant. I am very, very uneducated about what's going on over there. And one of the reasons why is, I mean, I think you probably have seen there is a lot of heavy, heavy topics this election season. And one of the things that I've discovered about myself is if I get wrapped up in all of them, like there is no time for me to actually live my life and look after my kids and be joyful and run my businesses. And so when that all happened, I'm kind of like, yeah, I think I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to focus on Trump and abortion and, the topics that I have authority in. And that's one of the ones where I've sat back and I've watched it create so much division in America. And I'm like, you guys understand that, like, we should really be paying attention to what's going on in our own country, um, as opposed to picking a side. Like you're saying, you didn't pick a side, which I think is great. So many people picked a side, and it's like, that's the hill I'm going to die on. I'm like, that hill that kind of has nothing to do really with what's going on in America right now. And maybe I'm wrong, but
Yeah, I would say you're wrong in the aspect that the pro-Palestinian movement, from what my understanding is, because again, I come from a military background. I served nearly 10 years in the Marines. I was a force recon Marine. I've worked with many different special forces groups, intelligence agencies, and I have a lot of knowledge just on. Oh, your camera cut out.
oh, hold on.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so I have a lot of knowledge on just how like terror organizations work in general because I studied it the majority of my younger adult life. And I see things building in the US. Again, we have to acknowledge the issue of our borders being open for the last 4 years, and intelligence agencies are predicting that there are tens of thousands of known terrorists who have infiltrated the US. And
Insane.
we are seeing these mass rallies behind the not the pro Hamas movement, the pro Palestinian movement,
Yeah.
which you could argue it is a pro Hamas movement because
Yep.
I've seen firsthand, even just in where I live, Irvine, rated like the safest city in America for the past 6 years. Right outside their police station, I have witnessed mass pro-Palestinian rallies where they're in the mix of all their flags were Hamas flags and other terrorist group associated flags. So either people are just uneducated as to what that symbolism means, or they truly support these terror groups, which that leads to another issue. And I'm in a few different like business group chats. One of them predominantly has a large Muslim community in there. So I've even had some discussions in that group chat with a lot of very pro-Palestinian movement people, Muslim people in general, who have a lot more, I guess you could say, personal and emotional investment into the issue. And I've seen some what I would call red flag conversations happening in there, such as the celebration of life for some of these recent terrorists that we've
Oh my
killed.
gosh.
Like the leader of Hamas was recently killed, and we've even seen public figures like Dan Bilzerian go out in the public eye and post on Twitter how terrible and sad it was, praise this hero. And I saw the same thing going on that group chat, and I'm like, this guy is like a certified terrorist. Like he is responsible for innocent deaths. He was behind the October 7th attack, which killed innocent people. Like innocent women were raped and sexually assaulted, hundreds of hostages taken. What justifies it?
Right.
And a lot of them, they eventually came to the conclusion, you're right, we cannot justify terrorism as a response. We cannot justify or glorify terrorist leaders in retaliation to what we think the Jews are doing, what Israel is doing. And I'm like, yeah, see, I can agree with that. Like, say Israel is the bad guy, Israel is the devil or whatever, but Hamas killing innocent people, no. And it's dangerous in the US because we have acknowledged tens of thousands of terrorists are just sleeping around. Where is that going? And if this conflict escalates, if the pro-Palestinian movement gets so utterly out of control and violent, and they can't have a proper discussion, then we could see some real life violence happening in the US, especially with this election coming right around the corner. There is a lot of talk in higher up military and law enforcement. I have some insider friends with Secret Service, FBI, the DOJ, even locally where I am, Los Angeles Police Department. They're prepared for civil unrest. So that could very well be another open door for some type of real life violence in America.
Scary. You could edit this part out, but I literally have to leave in 1 minute to go get my kids.
Oh, okay. No worries. Yeah. We could wrap this up. So yeah, this has been a cool conversation. Just to wrap up this segment though, what do you think, or what do you think is the most important thing on the ticket? And what would you say to voters who are still undecided?
I think the most important thing is the safety and security and innocence of our children. Like one candidate, President Trump, is looking out for little girls and girls remaining girls and girls being only girls in girls' bathrooms and in girls' sports, and parents being able to homeschool and removing the pornographic content out of the schools. And Kamala's over here saying men can be women and let's teach queer theory and the borders should be open and let everybody in. And also, women should be able to kill their babies up until 9 months of pregnancy. All of it, all of it ties into the future generation. And as a mom of 3 kids, to me, the America that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. And I want to preserve as much innocence as I can for my children. And I think that if you're not considering what kind of America we're going to leave for our kids based on this presidential election, then boy, you've got your priorities really messed up.
No, absolutely. Well, Lindsay, this has been another Mastermind Monday episode on the JD Show. Thank you so much for coming on. And to my viewers watching, thanks for tuning in. This has been a very hot topic debate, or not even necessarily debate, just overall
Almost
conversation.
agreement.
But yeah, I mean, there's only a couple of things that we didn't disagree or that we didn't agree on, which is totally cool. That's why I love having these conversations. But yeah, guys, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Make sure to like this video, share it with your friends so they can see just some different points of view online watching it. It's great to open up discussion. But with that being said, guys, Lindsay has to go pick up her children here, and we're going to cut this stream a little bit short. But Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to put all of your contact information in the description section so you get more followers. And with that being said, guys, see everybody on the next episode.
Yay! Thank you.